You dodged a civil war, 2 civil wars, in fact.
I got separated from my mom. Me and my brother were captured for like 2 weeks. If you spoke the language that I speak, you would pretty much get gunned down.
You came to the United States and you ended up putting on a uniform. How did that feel after having dodged 2 civil wars?
When going through what I went through, where put a weapon into the hands of anyone, it's like they became God. They became unstoppable. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to just treat people better.
Hello, everyone. Major Mark Incha, Public Affairs Officer for the Rhode Island National Guard. Today on our podcast, we had Staff Sergeant Othello Smith, a recruiter with our Recruiting Retention Battalion. We brought him in to talk about his personal experiences. He is a survivor of the Liberian and Sierra Leonean civil wars. We talked about his decision to join the National Guard and what made him adopt uniform service and how he gained his citizenship this way. In the second half of our conversation, we pivoted and we talked about the sense of purpose and belonging, a direction and a meaning for your life that uniform service can give. And we talked about what it is to belong to something that is bigger than an individual and what will outlive that individual. If that sounds interesting to you, I hope you join us. Welcome to the Rhode Island National Guard podcast. I'm your host, Major Mark Incha. Today we're joined by Staff Sergeant Othello.
Yes.
Othello Smith,
Yes.
Good friend of the channel. This is a cup, not the first product you've shot with us,
Nope.
but we wanted to bring you on, talk a little bit about the Rhode Island National Guard as a community, and a little bit about your experience getting here, because your road here was not straight.
No, it wasn't. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Again, my name is Othello Smith. I'm excited for this podcast. Hopefully, I don't stutter too much, right? And we're able to, give out some good information about the National Guard and about my story.
Awesome. So let's just jump right into it. So you've told us this before. We ended up not releasing that product, but just tell us a little bit about how you got here. Like, where are you from?
I was born in Liberia. Actually, I went back to visit about 2 years ago, and I actually learned a lot more that I didn't know, which kind of made my story even more phenomenal.
Okay.
So for the first time, I took the trip back. I was always scared because I didn't know anything about the country. So I went back for the first time, having met my mom, my biological mother, for about, I would say, 32 years. So I went back for the first time, and I actually told her my story, how my journey was to how I became the man that I am now, and she was tearing up hearing the story for the first time, and I was tearing up telling her the story for the first time, because this was the first time that me and her, we spoke on the phone, but to have a child and don't know what he grew up to be like or what he looked like, it was pretty amazing. So going back, separated from my mom at a young age, I couldn't even remember. I was in a barrack as the war started in Liberia. I lived in a barracks where, the tribe that I spoke, which is Kran, they were being, attacked by, it was more like a tribal war. That's how it started. And if you spoke the language that I speak, you would pretty much get gunned down and, either caught, decapitated. Any gruesome thing you could think about probably will happen to you. Luck was on my side when my uncle took me from the barracks and took me to my dad in a neighboring country, which is Sierra Leone. So still a young kid at that time. Got to Sierra Leone. We was in a refugee camp in Sierra Leone. We escaped the civil war. Was still ongoing in Liberia. I got separated from my mom. Don't ask me how it happened. I just know I was just by myself, and my uncle and his wife found me in the barracks. At that time, me and my brother were captured for like 2 weeks, and we was tied. So we was tied, and we couldn't speak our dialect as clearly as we could, which kind of saved our lives, because if we spoke the dialect, us being there captured probably would have never ended well for us. But due to the fact that we didn't speak it, they was saying these things to us, we couldn't respond. My uncle came and ended up, speaking to them because he spoke multiple dialects. So they let us go. So he took me, and we went to Sierra Leone, and we was in a refugee camp in Sierra Leone for about 2 years. Was it 1993, 94? Was in Sierra Leone, and Sierra Leone had their political election that year. What was it, like 95? They had a political election, and due to the election happening, their civil war broke out, which was more devastating than the one that was happening in Liberia. In Liberia, civil wars were, there was not trained soldiers that was fighting, right?
Yeah.
These were civilians, adolescent teens. You throw the M16, AK-47 in the hand, and they run in the street with machetes. It's as terrible of a story that you can actually, imagine. Like if you was playing zombie and people running around with machete and chopping people up. That's how gruesome and tragic it was. So Sierra Leone was the same thing. They adopted pretty much that mentality that was happening in Liberia when their civil war was going on. So we, the refugee from Liberia, just got caught in that political rivalry in Sierra Leone. So we pretty much now was in this refugee camp, had to go from this refugee camp in Sierra Leone and walk to a neighboring country in Guinea, where I think the ECOMO at that time is the peacekeeping force in Liberia that, took the refugees, and there was no vehicles. Everybody took their belongings, whatever you can grab, you put it on your head, and we are marching down a dusty road all the way to Guinea. So we made it to Guinea. My dad, some of my other siblings, we all made it to Guinea. And my dad had his aunt who raised him, so it's like his mom. In Liberia, when somebody raised you, they become, you call them mom.
Yeah.
So she was in America here, and due to the lack of communication, she didn't know where he was. So he knew a female here that who became my mom. My dad ended up meeting her and marrying her. So she communicated with my grandmom. Now we call her grandmother, and she said, "Hey, your son is in Guinea, and he's there with his children." And she took action immediately, and there's the program called the I-94 program, which gave asylum to refugees from Liberia that was seeking, safety from all the civil war and the devastation back there. So they were giving the I-94 green cards to us, but you have to have a relative that live here and that is able to, oversee, your stay here. So that happened. My dad, we escaped all that, by God grace only, and we ended up putting in our paperwork with the I-94 program. And then 1998, our first time ever, I got on the plane and ate French bread, and I was in New York. And the funny thing is, when I landed in New York, I thought the dream in Africa is, I don't know if I'm speaking for all African, but America, it's like the land of gold and honey. So when you in your mind, when you imagine America, you're thinking like when you step on the street, you're walking on gold streets and money is just coming down from the tree, and it's just the most. It's basically is making it to heaven. That as the best as I could put it. So, and even the video they make you watch prior to coming, where you can't pee in the street, you're not supposed to stare. Staring is bad. So they put you in a room, and then they teach you all these things.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't stare at people. Staring is bad. You don't urinate in the street. That's bad. Chew with your mouth closed when you're at it. They teach you all these things. So we got in New York, and I saw the street, and I was just so disappointed. I was like, this is America? It's like, what's going on here? There was a dude begging us for money, and I was like, I don't know. I didn't even understand what he was saying, man. I think he cursed at me. Now that I went back to it, I think he cursed at me. So yeah, so that's how, my first day was July 7th, and we came to, I can never forget that day. So that was my first day in the United States, 1998.
So I just got back from Cuba. I deployed to Joint Task Force Guantanamo, and two of my absolute best friends, Frank Tangbay and Nate Magby. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. I know Nagby very well and Tangbay very well.
They're also from Liberia.
Yep.
And every morning we had breakfast. Every morning we had breakfast together. And I asked them 10,000 questions about Liberia. I'm just so fascinated by it. Yeah. And they told me all these great stories, but they never mentioned the staring.
Yeah.
Is that like normal in Liberia? You guys just have very intense stares?
It's a normal thing for someone to stare at you because there's this relationship thing that they might know you.
Okay.
And Liberians, believe it or not, are very judgmental. Very judgmental.
Okay.
In the Liberian community as a whole. So going to a church in a Liberian church, you have to dress your best because somebody's going to have something to say about you.
Okay.
Go into a regular church, you go there with jeans on, you wear whatever you want to wear. So our weddings are pretty more, elaborate, right? So staring is one of those things. Even now they do it. So I would know when somebody is Liberian in my car because as much I can see them just staring in my car because they're trying to figure out if I'm Liberian. So, and I'm like, why are you just staring at me, right? And I'll stare back. So people do a lot of staring, and I used to do it. And now I even tell my kids, like, staring is bad. Don't stare.
Don't stare.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. And you sit there and you watch the entire video and they teach you the do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you come here, everything is totally different. You're like, well, why did I watch all that video? Yeah. So.
It seems like it feels like there's a large Liberian population here in Rhode Island. Is that true, or do you all end up in the National Guard?
There is a large population. I think we probably are the second largest population in the United States. Most of them are moving out now.
Okay.
But there is a huge coalition of Liberians here. Yeah.
Do you know what drives that? Like why Rhode Island?
It's the same factor, right? So if you have families here and they're filing these documents for you,
okay, yeah,
they already live here. So the potential is when you're on the phone with people in Liberia, where do you live? Rhode Island. They're like, when I go to America, I want to go to Rhode Island.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's Rhode Island, Minnesota. Yeah, we have a large population. We have an organization here in Liberia as well that oversee all the well-being of all the Liberians called the Liberian Association. Mm-hmm. And we even have a big event tomorrow, which I'm spearheading, which is the Liberian president is coming down. And he's going to be speaking at the high school at PCTA in the auditorium there. So he's going to be speaking. It's like a town hall where he's going to meet Liberians that live in the United States here, specifically Rhode Island, and he's going to answer questions about whatever questions that any Liberian have. He's going to be willing to answer questions. So. Me and Nagby, we're overseeing this event, and Jack Reed is going to be there representing the United States as well. So there's a good focus on Liberian in Rhode Island here.
One thing I was always amazed by, again at these breakfasts with Nate and Frank, was one, they have a absolutely deep-seated love of the United States, and they simultaneously had a deep-seated love for Liberia. And you referencing this event tomorrow, and you tell me that Nate's involved, I'm not even remotely surprised.
Yeah.
But they were like caught up on the politics. They knew exactly what was going on back home. And that's something that I'm Hungarian. Mm-hmm. I can only tell you who the president of Hungary is because he's in the news all the time, Viktor Orban. But I couldn't tell you anything about the politics of Hungary. I couldn't tell you anything about what it's like living over there. I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
Maybe jealousy is the right word, but you have like a connection to something that is important, and not at the expense of your love of the United States.
I think we're able to share our hearts between both countries equally because in the back of our mind, I feel like Liberia is always tied to the United States, even going way back in history. So most Liberians share this deep connection with America. And the foundation of which Liberia stand is, the free slaves that were here in America that was given the option to go back and settle. They chose Liberia.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why, our flag is the American flag, right? It's the same concept with one star. The Constitution, it's based off of the United States Constitution. The money we spend is a dollar bill, right? Our money is a dollar. So the way the country is constructed, right? It's absolutely based on how the United States is constructed. The first president, was from America, which was sent from here to represent in Liberia.
Yeah.
So that's why that connection is always there. So when Liberians come here, we assimilate a little faster, because our English is almost it's broken down,
Yep.
but we catch on really faster than most other countries, which English is not their primary language, and English is our primary language. So yeah, it's very easy for us to share that love, and we always feel like we are somewhat connected to America at the hip at some point. So that's why.
Okay. So you came over here, you dodged a civil war, 2 civil wars, in fact, and you came to the United States and you ended up putting on a uniform. Walk me through that. How did that feel? Like becoming a soldier, joining an army after having dodged 2 civil wars.
Yeah, that was an interesting process because the first time I entertained the idea, I was at URI, and I took military 101 courses because I was so interested in it. And the recruiters there was like, "Man, you're great." I did PT with them in the morning, and so I went home on the weekend, and I brought the conversation to my dad, and like my dad just exploded. And he was, it's pretty much, I took you away from all of this, possibility of you, dying, and then you want to come here and join an army and die. He thought it was ridiculous. It was absolutely no. He was so against it. Not against, he was just against the possibility of war. And me being, thrown into that environment and then losing me I think it just put so much fear into him. So I took the ASVAB, so I passed. The recruiter contacted him, and he just told the recruiter off. And he's like, "My son is not joining no army. He's not going to die here." So that was the end of it. And that was about 2008, 2009. And I always wanted to serve because one of the things that I find that triggered me was if you travel to any country other than the United States, and I wouldn't say civilized because I do believe people are civilized in these other countries, but soldiers' power is more. They have more power than any other civilian. Even more than the politicians, right? Being a soldier in Liberia or in another country, you have so much power. Or just being able to carry a weapon. And I think that being in the United States and just knowing what I knew, that the being a soldier or being a part of the military here means you're serving the people. It's not the other way around. And when going through what I went through, where you put a weapon into the hands of anyone, it's like they became God. They became unstoppable. And I wanted to change that. And I wanted to, I didn't know what direction I wanted to go with it, but I just knew that I just wanted to, when I was given the opportunity, I wanted to just treat people better and just and just make a difference. And because of my experience, and that was my driving force. It wasn't because I wanted. I was going to school and I did TD, that was giving me money and all that other stuff. So my motivation was a little different. I just wanted to serve. Yeah. So fast forward, I became an adult, and I was 28 years old. I had 2 kids. I had a decent job. I wouldn't say good. It was pretty boring. So I was like, I went back to the recruiting office. I went downtown, and then I was like, this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And, I feel like it's the right time. And I did not tell my dad until after I enlisted. I know either way he would have talked me out of it again. And after I enlisted, I came home, then I drove to his house, and I was like, hey, I just joined the Army. And he just walked around for a little bit and was like, okay. Yeah. So that's pretty much how, it all happened.
I mean, I understand where he's coming from. Now I am a father, kind of new. My daughter's only 18 months old. And
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's just perfect. It's just absolutely perfect. But for the first time in my life, I understand where parents come from when they hear that their little girl, their little boy is putting on the uniform.
Yeah.
Now I assume you have that conversation frequently. You're a recruiter now.
Yes, I absolutely do. And in reference to 2008 and 2009, I didn't think about deploying and going in a combat zone, and I was absolutely ready to do that as well. But I think the trauma that my father was going through was deeper than, because my memory going through what I went through was so foggy. It was only when I became an adult and I sat back and I really appreciated that pain that I went through. And I sometimes when I sit back and I take things for granted here in America, it's when I appreciate the pain. It's when that pain becomes something that gives me the ability to endure more. So I would say, even now that I'm a father, I know different, side of the coin. So as far as being a recruiter and how that, translate to me speaking to parents, it my experience, I lay on the table, and even after going through my experience, I still was willing to join in 2008 and 2009. However, times have changed, right? So I do tell parents that the possibilities are always there. The possibilities are always there. However, the military as a whole is based on what job you have, right? So if your child wants to enlist and he wants a job that will keep him away from conflict, we have those jobs available. And I don't make promises to any parents that is ridiculous. I'm not gonna say I'm not a politician, so we don't control what happens.
Yeah.
But we are the National Guard, but we also do get deployed. So you lay the facts on the table, and you tell your story, and then you tell your story, and you tell them how you are here where you are now, and the possibility of you, for you to serve has put you in a position that you're able to accomplish things that you never thought possible. And hopefully that could assist them and their child in the future.
That's great. Did you get your citizenship through service, or did you get your citizenship prior?
I did get my citizenship through service. I didn't even know that was a possibility. My father and I just kept renewing the green card. So my father looked into it. And so when I enlisted, my recruiter was like, hey, you could get your citizenship immediately. And I was like, oh, no way. He's like, yeah. So I enlisted, and I think it was about 8 months later, a a guy with like a creepy guy. It was very, very weird. He calls my phone. He's like, hey, I need you to meet me at this library in New Bedford. I want to talk to you. And I was like, I went to my NCOIC. I was like, some guy wants to talk to me. This is weird. He's like, bring your green card, bring any documents you have. And he was doing a background check.
Okay.
And so the background check was done. And then, I was swearing in, 7 months later. So I think that's one of the greatest opportunity that as a refugee or as an immigrant and you're coming into the United States and you want to fast track the process of you becoming a U.S. citizen, this is the gateway to that. And now they even swear you in at basic training.
Do they really?
Yeah. So we do the N420 form for you. A 05 or higher signs the form, or 06 rather. And by the time you get to basic, all your documents is ready. They swear you in, and they file for your passport. So your passport arrives at your doorstep when you return from training. So a lot of people have to go through a lot of hoops and marry somebody they don't want to be with just to get some papers. So
we absolutely don't advocate for that here on this podcast.
No, we don't. So there's no need to do that. Just join the military. It's the best way to go.
Man, that's fair. Tangentially or unrelated, there are a few things in life you can do that'll improve your position faster than marrying the right spouse. There's like nothing in life that will ruin your life faster than marrying the wrong spouse. I do not marry for citizenship. That is not the right motivation.
Believe it or not, I'm part of communities, and these are things that we. What I do for my community, we do help with immigration. We help with language barriers. We try to, if you just come into the United States, we put you in programs to help your speech. And believe it or not, our top priority is immigration and immigration paperwork.
Yeah.
So
I know it's something we take seriously here. I'm probably like a third-hand account, so the details to this may not be explicitly correct, but I remember Charlie Company was just deployed to Kosovo last year, and one of their soldiers was going through the citizenship process and was hung up. I don't know exactly what had happened, what had gone wrong, but he was hung up on his citizenship. And that made it all the way up to the second deck here, and our legislative affairs liaison greased a bunch of wheels, made a bunch of phone calls to congressmen, and got that going. And they ended up flying this kid and his team leader home from the deployment for like 12 hours. He was on the ground for like 12 hours, got his citizenship, and then flew back to Kosovo.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's something we absolutely take seriously here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So again, the details might not be entirely correct, but it is something we take very, very seriously.
Yeah.
This may not end in a question. This may just be me musing. So
Okay.
If it goes too long, stop me.
All right.
So I deployed to Iraq, 17, 18. And I spent some time in central Iraq, spent some time in northern Iraq with the Kurds.
Yeah.
And then spent some time, very little time, in Syria, which in 17, 18 was going through, that was like sort of the height of its ISIS-based civil war, right?
Yeah.
So like the pro-Assad people were fighting ISIS, who were fighting the Kurdish coalition, who were fighting Assad, right? It was like this three-way horrific civil war.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time looking out over the HESCO barriers at the world.
Yeah.
And I saw, well, in addition to missing all the green living things that grow here, I looked out and I saw a level of instability and chaos that is so alien, so foreign, that like a natural born U.S. citizen, like, just cannot wrap their heads around what life is like without the stability and the institutions that we have here that bring that stability.
Yep.
I wonder if that had something to do with why you put the uniform on. Like, obviously you grew up in an environment that had none of that stability, right? Like a civil war is basically when every institution that would otherwise stabilize the society breaks down.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that raise any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the military as a whole does bring some stability to your life. Just the structure of it, right? Active duty more than National Guard, I would say. But as a National Guard member, you still get that structure and that stability. You have overseers, but America as a whole, I will say, it's very stable, as stable any country can get. And I wasn't old enough to experience the instability back in Liberia. I think one of the things that I learned is that if you're young, you remember pain and trauma more than you remember the good times, right? So even as a young adolescent, you remember all your pains and trauma. So that's what stuck with me. And I would say we do take for granted what's so available to us here in the United States. And so going back home, like I said, 2 years ago, it brings back that feeling of appreciation of what we do here, and how I appreciate the fact that how stable it is here, because even though there's no war, but the remnants of the residue is still there. The pain and suffering is still in the people. The PTSD is in the youth. When you're walking down the street, just the you have these guys, the sets of youth that is just lost in the streets, and you have just people on the streets that just it's just selling things just to sell things. Somebody will sell you a pack of gum, and just one stick of gum all day in the street to sell you a pack of gum. And you're like, man, there's more sellers than there's buyers. And the Civil War left a deep hole that is still trying to be filled right now in Liberia, which everybody goes in and just take a piece of theirs, and they don't really care about the outcome of it. So when you go there, and then when I went there, when I came back, it resets you, and everything that you overlook while you're here, simple electricity, right, staying on throughout 24/7 without any interruption. It's just something you don't think about.
Yeah.
It's like breathing. You just go home, flick the light, it's on, right?
Yeah.
And you go over there, and all of a sudden, lights is out for like 2-3 hours, and you're like, okay, what do we do now? Then you wait, then it comes back on. So all these things, it make me appreciate what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping one day we're able to transfer that back there. But the road is longer than I thought. So, but it makes me appreciate what I do here.
Absolutely. I think one day it will. Having become such good friends with Tangbay and Nagby, and having spoken with you a few times and seen the passion and the level of care that you guys have, like, I think it'll happen. I don't think there's anything unique or non-replicable in the United States. I think it's a model that can work. I don't think there's a... Anyway, when I was a kid, I knew I always wanted to be a part of that apparatus that turned the lights on. I don't mean I don't be a power engineer, but I mean part of that, you just know things are going to go the way they're supposed to. If there's a roadkill on the side of the road, animal control at some point will stop by and pick it up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you go to Kuwait and that's not true. There's just dead camels on the side of the road everywhere. I knew I wanted to be a part of what made the United States tick, made it work. And for me, being in uniform was the best way to do that. It matched my personality. It matched my life goals.
Yeah.
We forget about it all the time because COVID happened shortly thereafter, but it was like January 2019. There was a massive gas outage in Newport.
Yeah.
I think it was like a leak in the main line or something. They had to shut off natural gas service to all of Newport in January.
Yeah.
In order to make the repairs. And so Newport's like 45,000, 50,000 people, and now none of them have heat. And the plan was, we'll just stand up some warming shelters and we'll go door to door and we'll just tell people, hey, if you're cold, go to this warming shelter. Well, I mean, who has enough bodies to go door to door to 50,000 residents, right? Well,
Right.
The National Guard. So,
National Guard.
oh, also, who has enough warm bodies to stand up a warming shelter? Oh, okay, it's the Salvation Army and the Rhode Island National Guard. Oh, who has enough bus drivers to move human beings from, like massive amounts of human beings from Newport to, I think, URI, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So, it's the Rhode Island National Guard. Then we get on ground, we're knocking on doors, we're telling people, hey, gas is going to be shut off for some period of time, and maybe it was a week, maybe it was less than that, maybe it was like 4 days. If you're cold, here's the emergency number, we'll move you to a warming shelter. Well, it turns out there's some large Hispanic-speaking communities,
Yeah.
where many of them don't actually speak English at all.
In Newport.
In Newport.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So we're knocking on door to door, and suddenly we're getting doors slammed in our face. They don't speak English. Now these guys in uniform are showing up and knocking.
Yeah.
It's scary. Well, all right, who has a large enough body of Spanish speakers to go door to door on these very specific households?
Yeah.
The Rhode Island National Guard. So
Yeah.
they made some phone calls, and overnight they had drummed up like 25 really fluent Spanish speakers in uniform.
Yeah.
And they were pulling them out of like Joint Force headquarters. They were pulling them out of the wing. I mean, like people with very comfortable office jobs are now going door to door and happy to do it because they're helping people in a way that now only they can. And I was just a photographer, so I was following around taking pictures of all this, and I was blown away at like who else could have done it? Who else brings that many people to the fight? And these are our own citizens. These are Rhode Islanders in need.
That's a great story, and I think capturing the deeds that the National Guard do, I think that's very important. I think so people are just clueless to what's happening, to what we do, and if it's not out there and if it's not on some social media outlet, they're never gonna know. They're never gonna know. So, and I think that was great, capturing that and making people aware of that. Yeah, we was out there to help, and this is evidence. And I think we do need that. We do need that. And it was great telling my story. I think I could tell that story a million times in this environment. I wouldn't have a problem with it. Yeah.
I probably would listen to it every time.
Yeah.
Poor Frank and Nate. I ask them questions like every morning. Like, sir, can I just eat my eggs?
Yeah.
Why you got to ask again?
He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Oh, I love him.
He's a great guy. Yeah.
So now you're a recruiter and you're putting guys in.
Yeah.
What are you putting them in? What is the Rhode Island National Guard?
So, the Rhode Island Army National Guard, I would say, when I put them in, I say you're joining one of the biggest networks that you could join, right? Educational networks, business networks, career networks, building bonds, building friendships, building relationships. Some people who gets married, some of their friends that stand in their weddings are people they serve with, So you go from an ordinary person who, have friends on the outside that you do day-to-day activities where you're like, you now have people that you could count on, you could trust that they will be there for you in the times when you need them to be. Besides the fact that, the opportunities of you going to school, the full-time opportunities that's there, the opportunity for you to learn a trade that could, benefit you down the line, that could help you grow as a person, as an individual. You know, the camaraderie and the ability to network with people and become vastly more, intelligent in other fields than you thought you would have ever been possible. I think that's very huge. I think that's huge. And people knowledge just grow from joining the National Guard. I know mine did. I had tunnel vision, and I go to work, go home, and that was my daily life. And it was very routine, besides my hobby of what I used to do. Other than that, it wasn't, I didn't know much about any Humvees or electrical work or, I didn't know much about a lot of stuff until I joined the Guard, and I met other people who does all these other things. And I was like, hey, I could do that, I was never a handyman, honestly. I never was. I couldn't fix anything, right? And then all of a sudden, I met guys from the engineers that do all these things, and they talk about how they fix their own property and do all these things. And I'm like, okay, how did you do that? And they show me, and I do it. I don't even have to be my MOS. I just learn from somebody else.
Yeah.
So I do like that. I think it's a great networking opportunity, and you could become a better person than you are now.
That's great. Yeah, it's funny. I have a theory that over the course of a 30-plus year career, the motivations that keep you in are not the same as the motivations that get you in the first place. So I joined it, I think it was like 21 or 22.
Yeah.
And for the same reasons that every 22-year-old joins. I was a suburban kid who needed adventure and danger in his life. And I needed the education benefits.
Yeah.
It's like what every 22-year-old. Now I'm 38, so I've been in for a minute, and I never think about adventure and danger. I never think about education benefits, but I'm still happy to get up and go to work every day. So like what keeps me coming in? It's certainly not the same as it used to be.
Yeah.
And I think if you asked me at 30, it would have been different than it is today.
Yeah.
But I think you said something a minute ago. You said you never worked with your hands. You're not a handyman.
I really wasn't.
And you're amazed how people work on their own properties.
Yeah.
So when I bought my house in 2017.
Yeah.
Man, that was really, really good timing. It was before the market went absolutely bananas.
Yep.
I also wasn't a handyman. I was raised by a bookworm to be a bookworm. Never liked working with my hands. Then I bought a house. And now I can do everything. Wiring, plumbing. I'm actually pretty good at carpentry. I started to fix my own cars, mostly because I'm broke, but also because when you own it, there's this enormous sense of pride.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, this is mine.
Yeah.
And I'm going to fix it right.
Yeah.
That's sort of like ownership. And the longer I stay in, the more I feel that way about the National Guard and even the state as a whole.
Yeah.
Like it's mine.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it right. And so it's not about adventure and it's not about education benefits. At 38 years old, it's like, no, this is mine.
Yeah.
And I'm going to fix it because I'm going to do it right. And I don't want to outsource it. I'm not going to hire somebody to come in and do my work. I don't know. Is that I don't know, what keeps you in? When you wake up in the morning, like what gets you out of bed?
I feel this tremendous responsibility, right, to grow in the National Guard, right. I just want to see how long, if by me staying in, if I'm able to reach the level where I'm able to impact, just change, right. Because I feel this responsibility of me putting people in, right, and I feel like, being responsible for the growth of the National Guard. And I take pride in that. Every time you enlist somebody, it's one person to the National Guard who's going to add to a unit that will make a difference. And you're 38, so you're not going to stay in forever, right? So at some point, we're going to have the changing of the guards, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
So
It's a day my wife looks forward to, let me tell you.
So, yeah, believe it or not, I do take tremendous pride in knowing that, I'm responsible for the growth of the National Guard, and I'm responsible for the changes that's coming to the National Guard. And every time you go to a unit, if you ask somebody who was a recruiter, and they're like, hey, Sergeant Smith, that brings a lot of joy to me. And I want to be able to also stay long enough to get to a rank or a leadership position where I can be able to sit at a table or in a meeting, and somebody who's Liberian and listen to the National Guard can walk in the room and see me up there, standing up there, and be like, hey, feel comfortable and feel like there is more than just putting on a uniform and serving for a month or a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. There is actual the ability for you to grow and become, a leader in the National Guard and be able to impact change, or at least, become some type of persuasion of how change is made. So I think that's my motivation.
That's a good motivation. And it's very similar to the best recruiter who ever was. With respect to the current body of recruiters, Adam Vita.
He is a great recruiter.
Man, that guy was awesome.
That dude is one of the best. He was my NCOIC.
Oh, really?
For like a while, and like Vita is my guy. I'm telling you.
Yeah. So he was my recruiter, as you might imagine. Genius recruiter, by the way. So
yeah.
My best friend and I fed ourselves on a platter to him. We played way too much Call of Duty. We were like, we want to be mechanized infantry. Didn't do any research on what units the Rhode Island National Guard had. We were just we're gonna be mechanized infantry. Well, we really loved the crew serve weapons. We're gonna be M2 gunners. So we went to him, and I think we filled out some form online, and Adam called us, and my best friend ended up getting medically DQ'd.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing really well in my ASVAB. So he was like, hey, you scored whatever it was, and you basically any job you want. You want to be a cryptographer, you can be a crypt, any job you want.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he's like, I think you should go Intel. And I was like, well, I wanted to be mechanized infantry. He looks at me and he goes, yeah, you wouldn't like the infantry. You're kind of a nerdy bookworm. You wouldn't really like it. Dude was reverse psychologying me. So now that I'm in it, I can look back. That was the time when Charlie Company had gotten their MTO change from a little LURS of 36 humans, and they had to go up to 150 humans, full size infantry. So recruiting had this mission to put 100 dudes in the infantry.
Yeah.
And Vita absolute reverse psychology. You wouldn't really like the infantry. Why don't you go someplace you can read books? I'm like, I can do that. So I wound up in Charlie Company, and we stayed in contact over the years.
Yeah.
And I really liked him. We became friends. I got the full-time job in public affairs, and he was always the first guy in recruiting I called whenever I needed a name. Hey, or I needed a contact. Who do you know? Whatever. I was always the first one he called. Hey, sir, we need pictures of this. Can you come cover that? Yada. We just had this great rapport. And then he called me. It was either the night before or 2 nights before he retired.
Yeah.
To invite me to his retirement. But he told me, he's like, recruiters, we take pride in who we put in. We care about the organization. We're very future focused. And he told me that I was always really proud that I put you in, because we like to say, we want guys, obviously, there's always the one and dones. They do their 6 years and they get out, and that's fine. There's some percentage of the force that should be that. But the guys who in my case, went to ROTC and got commissioned. And then at the time I was a company commander, took a company overseas. He was always really proud of me. And I don't know why, but that really moved me that night. because I always assumed he was so good at reverse psychology. Like I always assumed that I was just a number to him, right? And that our relationship was strictly professional. I trusted him, so I went to him. He trusted me, so he came to me. But that night, I'm pretty sure it was like the night before he retired.
Yeah.
He made it very obvious to me that it was more than just professional. Like he cared about me as a person.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot just from that one conversation. I assume that you care about your recruits. Tell me about like your relationship with your recruits. Tell me about how that works.
I would say I absolutely care about my recruits. I think you have to. You have to build that relationship with them because you're asking. You're not asking. Most people wake up and say, "I want to join military service." You don't have to convince them. They don't need any benefits. They just want to serve, right? And then you have, a large amount of the population who, what's in it for me, right? What do I get out of it? So now they're trusting you, whatever information that you're going to give them that, it's fair and it's true. So that comes with them building that relationship with you. And for me, it's important that whatever we tell them, it's absolutely true. And whatever you do, you're doing it out of genuine of your heart, not just to put them in as a number. And I honestly did learn that from Vita because he was my NCOIC. And even as a recruiter, we never felt like you ever was given the order. Like Vita would tell you something and then you would feel like, you're just going to do it because you don't ever feel like, man, why is he making me do this?
Yeah.
It's more like, a way of speaking to people to get them to trust you where that person would do anything for you. And I think applying that to recruiting and applying that to relationship you build with people where they don't feel like, you just want to enlist them and then move on and go on to the next best thing. I think it's that's why people in the community pick up the phone. They call me, hey, we got this. My son wants to join. My daughter wants to join. How can you help her? Because now you build that trust in the community. You build that trust with people. And I think trust is huge. Relationship is huge. And, staying in contact with them. That's one thing we do as well. You have to make sure that they'll call you. They will ask you a bunch of questions, especially I enlist a lot of people that, that come from, they're probably less than a year in the United States that don't have any idea of how the system works.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly, hey, this is how you get your driver license. This is how, this is, I have a soldier that just came back that is going to take a road test. So, put you through that process. Or how can I get a job? Okay, these are companies that's hiring, try to apply there and, this is how you go about things. And so I think specifically being in an ethnic community and most of the people that I recruit are from that ethnicity field, I feel like our relationships is more important than just walking in a room and saying, yeah, I'm here to, sign you up 3 years and, off you go.
I love that.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that. It very related to one of my own sort of leadership principles, which is I never, ever forget that the human being on the other side of the conversation is like a real actual person. They're the protagonist of their own life story.
Yeah.
They have a parent who loves them. Yeah. Maybe they have kids that love them and depend on them. They've got brothers and sisters and friends and a job. And like, they're like like an actual human being. They're not which seems like really simple. I know everyone's probably like tiny little golf clap, like, oh yeah, Mark treats them like a person. But it's true. You have to. They are actual human beings.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to order them to do things that are unpleasant or dangerous. But one, you only do that when necessary. And two, you have to do that in a way that respects them as a person, the humanity inherent to all of us. So I love that. I absolutely love that. It probably helps that you're selling a product that's easy to believe in.
Yeah.
So I used to sell cell phones. Before I joined the Army, I was a cell phone salesman.
Okay.
Back in the absolute Wild West, there was multiple cell phone companies. This was back when I can't even remember their names anymore. It wasn't just like the big three. So I was selling cell phones back then.
Yeah.
I was specifically a cell phone salesman. Back then, and operated very few actual stores. They were all through these like third-party affiliates. And I was terrible at it. And I was terrible at it because I didn't really believe in the product, and I hated it. When I first got there, we were establishing ourselves as a store. My boss sort of let me make up prices. He'd be like, everything here, like he just gave us a sheet of what each phone cost the store, and he let us charge whatever we wanted, knowing that whatever we charged above the store cost determined our payout. I really liked the job then because I felt like I was helping people. Because I truly believed at the time that was a good service. And then I got to charge them what I thought were fair prices for the phones. And I felt like I was helping people.
Yeah.
Then we got bought out by another third-party affiliate. New boss said, no, I'm not going to tell you what the phones cost. I'm going to give you the price that we're going to sell them for.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to rake people over the coals. I mean, we were like probably the first store in the country to charge $30 for a phone charger. Like everyone charges $30 for a phone charger now. But in 2008, like we were the only people in the country charging $30 for a phone charger.
Ridiculous,
Yeah, it's crazy. And my boss's theory was like, I want to take you for all you're worth. I don't think I like sales in principle, but I think if I were selling a product like the Rhode Island National Guard, I could probably do it.
Okay, sounds like we have. Sounds like you're coming to recruiting.
No, I want to hear your theory. Is the Rhode Island National Guard a good product to sell? Is it a good fit for people?
I'd say it depends on your circumstance, right? It's everyone's circumstance. If I go to high school, it's the best product for high school students.
Okay.
Absolutely the best product for high school students.
Why?
Because if you're getting out of high school, you're 17, 18-year-old, about to graduate, and you want to serve. You have different reasons why you want to serve. Most of them want to serve because, they want to, some of them just want to do something, just fun, exciting, right? And some of them want to, get a trade. So I would tell them, hey, the National Guard is absolutely, even if you want to go active duty, it's still your best option because you're 17-year-old, you're 18-year-old. I would not recommend you going active duty just for the reason because you don't actually know what you want to do yet. You think you do, but you really don't. So I would say in that circumstance, I will highly recommend to a high school student to join the National Guard because you can always go active duty, right? You get the training out the way and you come back home, you reassess your life, try school. If school doesn't work for you, try that trade you learn, from the National Guard, right? If that doesn't, you don't fancy that either, then you could still go active duty. It's not impossible for you to go active duty. Based on the contract you signed, that's why I don't have people signing contract that will leave them in an impossible situation. So I think for a high school student in that situation, I would say this is absolutely the best product for them. Now you got adults, with families, and I would say that's 50-50. Okay. If an adult wants to, he asks me, he's struggling for money and he needs to provide for his family and, he needs income, right? And he's sitting in front of me and I'm a National Guard recruiter and I will give him all the options, right? And I will absolutely let him know that, this is a part-time service. Your pay will only come from drilling 1 week in a month. You can get put on orders, but, that is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Right? So that's 50-50 when you put it in that in that context, right? Mm-hmm. So our products becomes valuable based on the individual you're talking to. So you have to assess that situation and figure out who you're talking to. If my product stand a chance with that individual or another product stand a chance, then you ask yourself the dying question is, do you want that number bad enough to sell them a dream, or do you want that person to give you a lead in the future because you told them the truth?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I was just having this conversation with Sergeant Rajsombath. It was just last week. We were talking about what the National Guard provides. And one thing at 22 years old, was not prepared to use this language. I couldn't see it for myself, but looking back, I see it. Provided me like direction and purpose. It was something bigger and better and more important than me that I could be a part of.
Yeah.
And if I didn't know what to do on a Wednesday afternoon, I could at least say like, well, I'm going to go to the gym because I have these commitments to this thing that's important. Let me just,
Absolutely.
right? And I ended up like digging myself as deep in as I could, because it turns out I love being a soldier, which isn't true of everyone. But it absolutely provides direction for someone who has none of their own.
Yeah.
And it can do that for a good period of your life. I think it probably can't provide a lifetime worth of direction if it's the only thing you have.
Yeah.
Like, say, go get yourself a family, go get yourself a hobby, go get yourself a church or something.
Yeah.
But like for a 22-year-old, no lie, I could see myself having been very happy doing nothing but soldiering and just digging myself deeper into this gig for like 8 to 10 years. I got lucky. I happened to meet my wife. I happen to have a beautiful house and a beautiful daughter, and I have things. But like, I joined at 22. I could very genuinely see myself having sustained myself on nothing more than the Army until probably about 30, 32.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a value for someone who has nothing else going on, which I don't want to judge people, but like at 22, a lot of people don't have a lot going on at 22.
Yeah.
Certainly I didn't. There are a few things that will give you more benefit for your time, I think, than the National Guard.
Yeah.
And I mean that in both in tangible and intangible ways. I mean, how many people will give you a VA home loan to go buy a house?
Right.
Right? Like for 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer.
That's how I purchased my house.
That's how I purchased mine too.
Yeah.
I mean, I was broke as all heck.
Yeah.
I had no money.
Yeah.
But 2017 was the right time to buy, so bada bing, bada boom, I bought a house. Yeah. No one at 22 years old understands a 401k.
No.
Or they don't care about saving for retirement, but like, how many places are going to give you a TSP with matching?
Right.
If you're not familiar, TSPs basically are 401k.
Yeah.
With matching.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I wish I could have gotten that at 17 years old and started my retirement back then.
That's big.
Again,
That
1 weekend a
big.
month, 2 weeks in the summer.
That's big.
It's the best resume builder you can imagine. Like, oh yeah, I was a fire team leader overseas.
Yeah.
They're like, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think even back to the structure, and I think even individuals who are of age, 30, 28, the National Guard does provide some structure. And you might think that, I have it, I'm old, I go home to my family, I know what to do, the right things. But, when you actually go to training, you're in an environment where you're required to be at a certain place at a certain time, not waking up when you want to wake up, but, waking up when it's time to wake up. I think that's a reinforcement that everyone could use, can bring a little bit of more, alertness to their life, where they're like, okay, man, I've been, I just been, going down the same road without actually looking around me for a long time, and maybe I'm slowing down, and you hit a wall, and a lot of people do that, and they think that still just being okay with whatever they have, it's fine. Sometimes if you join the National Guard, join military service, give you that extra boost you might need to maybe further yourself beyond where you are now. So I think, that in the sense with an adult, I feel like that works for them. As for most people, I met a gentleman who that's exactly what he wants. He wants to just be rejuvenated, and you know, and you feel like he's feeling sluggish. He's doing, it's mundane. This routine is the same, and he wants something different. He wants to be rejuvenated and become more motivated. So I was like, well, this is perfect.
Yeah. Boy, do we have a job for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get it. I think one of the greatest lies ever told is telling somebody that you are the most important thing in the world. No, you're not. You're like one person.
Right.
Nothing is going to make you more fulfilled than finding like meaning in your life. And by the way, like chasing short-term fun isn't that.
Right.
Unrestricted hedonism probably isn't a key to happiness. So what is? Well, I don't know. I'm not a happiness guru, but I suspect being a part of something that's important and doing work that's meaningful, that's bigger than yourself, that will live on beyond yourself, probably is a part of that recipe. I think it's why having kids is so meaningful. It's like, okay, a little piece of my values, a little piece of my beliefs, a little piece of a betterment of the world will outlive me. That's got to be a huge part of it.
Right.
Oh, guess what else will outlive you and make the world a better place when you're gone? The Rhode Island National Guard will.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So not to get super philosophical and Jocko Willink in this conversation, but like, you know, it's almost like a cheat code. Like, it's a really quick, easy way to get plugged into something that will outlive you doing really important, really meaningful work.
Yeah.
That you can be a part of.
Yeah. It's whatever happiness definition is to anyone or individual. I believe just being remembered for something more than what you're doing, selfishly. I would say we all live selfishly, and I believe joining military service is the most selfless things you could do, is giving your time, your effort, everything you have, even sacrificing time with your family to help somebody that you don't even know, and which could be in your state or across the ocean, and you will be remembered for that. Whether it might not be in the newspaper, but that person across the ocean or in the state will remember you, and I think that's fulfilling. So whatever your definition of happiness is, but if you could do something selfless, I think that's important. Yeah.
So we've been at this. We've had this for a minute.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything that I haven't asked? What am I missing?
Well, I believe that we had a great conversation, and it was great speaking about my road to where I'm at now, and my time my horrific time in the Civil War, to being here and as a recruiter sitting across from you, sir, and speaking about my life experiences. I think that it was a good way for us to engage people, from different sorts of life, different communities, people that have experienced what I've experienced and haven't had the ability to tell their story. Maybe they could sit back and connect with this story and feel like, they're not the only one that's living with such pain and trauma, that they can actually, do more for themselves. I feel like we touched on all of that, and we did dive down into the recruiting part as well, how the National Guard can vastly improve you, helping out your community, being selfless, being able to set yourself up for retirement, and so I believe that we did touch on the important details about the National Guard and about my story, and it was a pleasure being here to share all that with you.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Solid.
Really good. That was awesome. That was a great conversation.
You need your own show now.
Thank you. you, sir.
No, thank you for joining us. I had a lot of fun on that one.